So it's a game you're interested in. I found something for you to dote on.
Yeah! Alright. What's up, my friends? Welcome. Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Complete set review. Every card constructed and limited. Going over all the cards, all the bonus sheets, all the crazy wacky stuff, everything. We did white, now we're doing blue. I want to remind you all, of course, boom. 10 new brews in 2 days. That's right, this Wednesday, 11 a.m. We're playing all 10 new brews on the early access stream. Really excited about it.
Yeah.
Early access is back. I'm pumped to all these decks. You're pumped to watch, obviously. Check that one out. We got Bronze Mythic coming up also. Check that one out. That's going to be next week during the release. And I hope to see you there for both of those on Twitch and on YouTube as well. But for now, we got blue to go over. All right, y'all, our awards to give. Make sure you hit that solid like button. Support the content, please. I've been sick, and I appreciate y'all being patient. And now I'm here and ready to rock and roll. And your support makes that possible. So, like, comment, subscribe, do the things, and let's go. Starting out with Ark Mages Newt. This is a blue 2-mana Salamander Mount. It's 2/2. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback on its turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, unless it is saddled, in which case it is 0. So what does saddle mean? Of course, saddle is a new mechanic, very similar to crew on a vehicle, but it's on creatures instead. So rather than making a artifact into a creature, you're just augmenting a creature and making it better by saddling it. So saddle 3 is a lot. That's a huge amount. And I think this card is pretty moby, honestly. This is pretty close to my trap card. Ended up not being the trap card, but I think overall this card's pretty meh. This is nothing like a card like Dreadhorde Arcanist or Snapcaster Mage. This has to successfully hit your opponent as a 2/2, and then you can flash a card back. You don't get to get a new card or whatever. This card's just rough, and you can't use the card you're flashing back to help push it through like Arcanist does also. And Saddle 3 is a ton for a deck full of a bunch of spells in it also. I think this card's just very meh. Very meh. Fine limited card. I mean, it's the 2/2 for 2, which is fine, obviously, but I think this card's going to play a lot worse than it looks. Mostly just a blue grizzly bear, and that's not really good enough. Up next is Canyon Crab. It's meant for an 0/5. That's a booty. Creature Crab, uncommon. 2 mana to give it +2, +2, -2 until end of turn. Beginning of your end step, if you haven't cast a spell from your hand this turn, draw and then discard. So, of course, this, if you haven't played a spell mechanic, is fairly common in this set because there are the plot cards. So it's a way to kind of play a spell without playing a spell. So it shouldn't be too hard to trigger. This card's great, honestly. And if all it was an 0/5 for 2 with that loot ability, it would be a fine defensive card. But this card can get in too, right? We can just attack and pay 2 and get attack for 2. If they don't block it, pay 4 to take 4. So very flexible card. Great limited card too, honestly. Just flexible at all points in the curve. Cheap, blocks well, defensive, has good value in the late game. Also, if you're flooded in the late game, you just lose. You can cast a spell, right? So great limited card. Funny art too. Love it. Constructed, no, but great limited card. Daring Thunder Thief. 4 mana for a 4/4 flash ETB tap. Now, of course, if it's an ETB tap, this card would be insane. Being able to ambush your opponent's attackers with the 4/4s, really good. This is a pretty large creature for a blue deck to have access to in limited. Blue does not usually get a 4/4 for 4. Coming in tapped is a big deal. That's a huge drawback in modern and limited, where it just can't block the first turn you play it, which is very rough. That being said, it's a lot different to say go with mana up and be defenseless than it is to be tapped out and defenseless, because your opponent might not want to go for a pump spell or a haste creature or whatever else. So that kind of works. Obviously, card also plays well with all of your mechanics that care about not playing a spell on your turn. So this card seems pretty cool. Probably a bit of an archetype card for limited. Not a card every deck wants, but it's pretty good if you're doing the right thing. So yeah, cool archetype limited card. Obviously not playable constructed, but cool. Deep Muck Desperado. This is a Hominid Mercenary. Hominids are back. Somebody call Patrick Sullivan. He's going to be freaking stoked. Just look it up, all right? 3 mana for a 2/4 uncommon. Whenever you commit a crime, each opponent mills 3. Only triggers once a turn. So, of course, what is committing a crime? That just means you've targeted your opponent or anything they control or any card in the graveyard. So, counter a spell, target a creature, exile a card in the graveyard, whatever it is. Lava Spike you. It's all a crime. And Not a hard thing to do in limited. There are common crime lands, and milling 3 is a reasonable amount. And there aren't really any like graveyard things happening in the set. There's like flashback or collect evidence or whatever. So milling your opponent like isn't going to help them as the game goes on until you actually deck them. That being said, is mill a viable winning condition in limited? Not usually, but this card's reasonable. 2-4 for 3 is reasonable enough. And like, if you end up with like 3 of these in your deck, that'd be pretty awesome too. So, card's cool. Cool limited card. Looks like a fun build around. Not a high pick or anything, but pretty fun card. And yeah, that's really it. Xin of Fools Fall. This is a 5-mana blue common 4/3 flyer with plot 4. So again, plot is a mechanic where you spend the mana up front, put the card off to the side, face up, and then you can play it on any future turn as a sorcery for free. So, not really that exciting, because 4 mana for a 4/3 flyer is like, it's fine, but not like insane or anything. And plotting it's a pretty big deal to just tap 4 mana and do nothing and say go. So I think this card is pretty middling overall. It's just not a great payoff for the cost. Probably better plot cards also. I think this card is just a medium filler limited card. Double down. 4 mana for an enchantment. Replay an outlaw spell, combat spell. What's an outlaw? Outlaw is just a class of creatures. So assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks are outlaws. So if a card calls out an outlaw, that's what an outlaw is. Simple as that. And this allows you to copy your outlaw spells. We've seen this card before in like for zombies and like the zombie set or whatever. If your deck is all outlaws, this card's pretty cool and limited. Obviously a fun commander card also. Constructed, tap and 4 mana just to do nothing is just not good enough, I don't think. It looks like a pretty fun card, but depends on what outlaws you're copying to. You gotta like go over and look at all the cards or whatever. But I think this card's most the casual card. If you're gonna cast this card on turn 4 limited, you better cast a damn good 5-drop outlaw on turn 5 to make up for the lost time. But it's a cool card. Pretty fun build around. Pretty fun casual card. It's cool. Duelist of the Mind. Best in Show, Nathan Stoyer, our World Champion 2022. 2 mana for a star 3 human advisor with flying and vigilance. Power equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. Whenever you commit a crime, you may loot, which is pretty powerful, obviously. Only once a turn, though. This card's just really, really good, right? So, at its absolute base, this is a 1/3 vigilance for 2, which is like not incredible or anything. But if you draw just a single extra card, it's a 2/3 vigilance, which is great. And it also has vigilance, you put counters on it too. So insane with Rafine, insane with Prof's Eidetic Memory. If you're just drawing cards in other ways as well, which is fine. Cards are just super, super solid. Really, really good 2-drop. It's a lot for a little, right? Cheap. Solid card. Very, very good. Things start to see a lot of play in standard. Possibly in older formats, maybe not though. But definitely, I think in standard for sure. As long as Rafine and Prof's Memory are still legal, this card's gonna be really, really cool. Great limited card, and potential in older formats too, where you just like draw a ton of cards. Brainstorm, draw 3, attack for 5. That's pretty cool too. Probably not good enough for Legacy, but still, card is obviously very, very powerful, and it's cheap, which is really good too. So best in show for blue, Duelist of the Mind. Emergent Haunting is next. Is it an Innistrad set, or what is this? Really cool art. 2 mana for an enchantment uncommon. Beginning of your end step, if you haven't cast a spell from your hand this turn, and this is not a creature, it becomes a 3/3 spirit creature with flying, additions other types. Play 3, surveil 1. This card is awesome. This is just 2 mana, play it, turn 3, say go. It's a 3/3 flyer, which is really, really cool. So, obviously plays well unlimited in like the blue-white sort of like, plot stuff. And don't play things kind of deck. If you're playing a flash deck, you're playing a tempo deck. Turn 2 this, turn 3 say go, play Spellcaller in their turn. Also awesome. A 3/3 flyer for 2 is not insane, but it's pretty good, honestly. It has the ability to surveil also, which is cool too. Card's cool, honestly. So yeah, sweet card, fun build around, looks really cool. Not gonna win the game by itself, obviously, but a really, really cool piece to a puzzle, which is nice. Failed Fording, 2 mana for an instant. Bounce non-land permanent. If you control a desert, surveil 1. There are deserts in a set, and there are a small amount of cards that care about them. This has become a common thing lately with with caves and other things where like there's a small set of lands. Some things care about them. It's kind of cool. So Just your bounce spell, you know, nothing really exciting. It's a bounce spell, unlimited. You know what it does, honestly. Fibblethip, lost on the range. Our little buddy is lost again. Blue 1, legendary Homunculus for a 1/1 Ward 2. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. The top card of your library has plot. So once again, plot is you pay a upfront cost. That plot cost equal to its mana cost. You may plot non-land cards from top of your library. So this is just like a future sight for 3, basically, where you can just like keep plotting cards. I think this card is like sneakily kind of cool. Say you just like play this on turn 3, right? You untap and you just like plot a 1-drop, plot a 1-drop, plot a 1-drop, plot a 2-drop. Say go. You know, that's like pretty good, right? You know, obviously a 1/1 for 3 is a pretty tall task, but being able to play cards on the top is pretty good. If the card already has plot, you can just play it for its plot cost or its mana cost. It'll have both, I believe. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure. I would think it would have both plot costs. I'm not sure actually, but yeah, pretty cool card. Again, is it playable constructed? I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure, but it is powerful than it looks. Hitting two lands in a row is obviously a big deal. But yeah, obviously a great limited card. Really cool card in general. Pretty fun overall. Card sweet. Fun card. I like it. Fleeting Reflection is next. 2 mana for an instant uncommon. Creature you control gains hexproof on a turn. Untap the creature. Till end of turn, it becomes a copy of the one other target creature. So, on the one end, if a trick is going to protect your creature, it's got to cost 1 mana. Period. 2 mana is far too much for a protection spell. However, what makes this card exciting for constructed is the combo with the Merfolk that untaps things. There's a combo with the 1/3 Merfolk that can untap other things, and the enchantment that makes Merfolk tokens when you tap things. This is another piece for that puzzle, where you only need one of the card in play, and you can kind of make another copy and do the thing, which is kind of cool as well. So, could be a piece there. Is that good enough? Not really sure. Otherwise, this card doesn't do too much, and not a very card limited either. It's kind of an interesting trick in limited, I guess, where you just like size up your creature too. So maybe I'm undervaluing it a little bit, but overall, I don't know. Cool art though. Garoth the Fleshright. No awards. No awards, but Monastery Mentor, eat your heart out, right? 2 mana for a 2/3 legendary human warlock. Whenever you cast a spell during your turn, other than the first spell that turn, make a 2/2 zombie rogue token. Whenever a zombie ETB is under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each other zombie that enter the battlefield under your control this turn. This card's wild, right? So, absent of any zombie payoffs, this is just Monastery Mentor. But the creatures maintain their power and toughness, but you don't get 1 for the first spell. So, play this thing, and I go opt, bolt. I get a 2/2 and a 3/3, which is really good, obviously. Also plays World with Plot, and then it does not trigger on your opponent's turn. This is more of like a spell card, but it cares about any spell, not just instant sorceries. So I can just play creatures and stuff too. And then when you add on the fact that like all the zombie cards from Innistrad are still legal, like they aren't like seeing any play, but they're still legal. They're still there, you know? And then that means you can play a zombie and pump that zombie too, which is kind of cool too. So this card's pretty sweet. It's like a weird mixture of like a Spellslinger card and a zombie tribal card. Kind of does both reasonably well also, which is kind of cute. And again, does so at a pretty good rate too. So card's pretty cool. I think this card is going to be a player in Standard for sure. And in Limited, also very good. Just a super, just a solid card to play with all your plotty cards or whatever. Card's cool. Card's going to play better than it looks, I think. Really cool helping hand target as well. Card's kind of gas. Moving on to Geyser Drake. Windrake, eat your heart out. 3 mana for a 2/3 flyer, which is obviously a lot better than Windrake. As long as it's not your turn, spells cost 1 less to cast. It's great. Good limited card. If this was cheaper for constructed, maybe, but, obviously not at this cost. But for limited, this card's great. Good limited card, cool flash stuff, fine body. It's good. Cool art, too. Harrier Strix. 1 mana for a 1/1 flying bird. ETB tap a permanent. 3 mana to loot. Man, they make 1-drops really good these days, right? Like, that's a lot of text for a freaking 1-drop. 1/1 flying for 1 with two abilities is pretty solid. Commits crimes, taps things, loots in the late game. Card's good. Just good, solid common for limited. Jace Reawakened. Oh boy. Look who's back.
It is small, right?
2-mana Planeswalker. Our second ever, although kind of a caveat here, put a little asterisk on that one. Obviously, it has the text of Serra Avenger, where you can't play it on turn 1, 2, or 3, barring shenanigans. That's a huge downside, right? So this is sort of like not really a 2-mana Planeswalker. Well, I guess we're in 6. Whatever, sure. We don't. Stop making fun of me! +1, draw a card, discard a card. Okay. Not exciting, honestly. Unless you're playing a graveyard deck, not super exciting. +1, you may exile a non-land card from mana value 2 or less from your hand. If you do, plot it. Now, this is where things get tricky, because this can plot things like Tybalt and other flip cards. It can plot Tybalt or Valky into Tybalt. It can plot Bramble Familiar into whatever Bramble Familiar's adventure is. That's kind of a big deal. But again, can't do it until turn 5, right? You play it on turn 4, plot, then turn 5, you play it for whatever. That's not that, crazy or whatever. But it's a thing, for sure. Definitely a thing for older formats, but not like the most exciting. And then -6 on a turn. If you cast a spell, copy it. You may choose new target to the copy. Sure. That's fine, I guess. So, there are things going on with this card as far as, like, the plot effect. I think the plot effect is by far the most important one. That being said, you can Leyline of Anticipation Miss into play on turn 2 on your opponent's turn. That's not a reliable plan, I don't think. I'm pretty low on this card. It'll do some things maybe, but it's not a very powerful card by itself either. Like, it's not a very good Planeswalker. It's mostly just like a weird combo piece, and that's just kind of weird. So, I don't know. Not big on Jace. Could easily be wrong, though, because this is one of the weirdest cards I've ever seen. Planeswalkers are incredibly hard to evaluate anyway, and this one's, like, weird as shit Planeswalker. So, I don't have any idea. And then in Limited, not very good, honestly. It's okay. I mean, like, just being able to loot is fine, I guess, but not the most exciting. Jailbreak Scream. 1 mana. Sorcery with Spree. Spree is an ability where you have to spend extra mana on the spell to get possible multiple abilities. So this is 1 mana +3. Put a +1 counter on target creature. Can't be blocked this turn. Not a very good ability, obviously. Or +2. Target artifact or creature's owner puts it on top or bottom of their library. So what we have here is basically a time ebb. So we have 3 mana for put a creature on top or bottom. That's fine. Usually we see this at instant speed for 4 mana. So at a sorcery for 3 mana is pretty good. More of an aggro card in that respect. But fine. The unblockable part is like basically just like rider text, where like you might do that also late in the game. For the most part, this is blue's common removal spell unlimited, which is reasonable. Fine card. More of an aggro card, but reasonable. And then also the unblockable ability will play into the aggro aspect as well. So I would say this is a solid removal spell for your aggro deck unlimited, and not much else. Loan Shark. It's not the Bombin Common, but it is quite good, I think. 4 mana for a 3/4. When it ETBs, if you cast 2 or more spells this turn, draw a card. Plot 4. So this plays well on both sides of the plot equation, right? Where if you plotted a thing already, you can just play it and then cast it and draw a card. And if you haven't plotted anything, just plot this and then play some other spell and cast this and draw a card. Obviously, creatures that ETB and draw a card are very good limited. It's not like rocket science, folks. And the body is good enough also to be happy about it. A little bigger than something like Corpse Appraiser or not Corpse Appraiser, Corpse Harvester or the Wolf or whatever it might be. So this is a pretty damn good limited card. 4 is a lot to plot, however. So I'm a little concerned with that as far as mana value goes. Again, tapping 4 mana and then not affecting the board at all is rough. We'll see how fast the format is. But if your deck is defensive enough, it can definitely do that pretty well. So we'll see. We'll see. But very good limited card, not a constructed card. It's cool. Up next is Marauding Sphinx, which is a 5 mana 3/5 flying vigilance ward 2. Limited cards these days, am I right? Jeez. I mean, you commit a crime, surveil 2, once a turn. I mean, just a monster limited card, right? This would be a bit of a rare back in the day. Like, it's all in some ways better than Serra Angel. You could argue a 3/5 vigilance is better than a 4/4 vigilance. Excuse me. And then obviously has this scry ability too. It's a great limited card. I think the fact that it blocks really well is also good too. So, I mean, that's it. Just great limited card. I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's just really, really good. Metamorphic Blast on this free card here. We have 1/1 at instant speed uncommon to make a creature into an 0/1 rabbit token, or 4 mana to draw 2 cards, or both. This card is pretty sweet. Both of these effects are fine by themselves, right? It's 2 mana, you know, shrink creature to an 0/1, turn to frog kind of thing is pretty good in limited. You know, it's a fine combat trick. Turn to frog, removing abilities might be better in some ways, but still a very powerful effect. Very, very reasonable. And then Inspiration, just like 4 mana instant draw 2 is also fine too. And then like later in the game, if you like kill their creature and draw 2 with this, that's also great too. So this is a good limited card. Constructed, probably not. You know, it's been a while since Inspiration's been playable. But great limited card. Very, very solid. Looks pretty good. Nimble Brigand. We got an outlaw here. They're out for a 1/3 human rogue. Cannot be blocked if you commit a crime this turn. Whenever it does combat damage to a player, draw a card. I mean, Ophidian, eat your heart out, right? All my OGs know what Ophidian is, and all my Zoomers don't. It's as simple as that. But this card is pretty reasonable, right? You know, the body's fine. You're draw 1 card. Of us are pretty happy. And then committing crimes isn't that difficult either. It's important to note this is probably a better aggro card than anything else because, like, it doesn't block super well. So, like, you need to be aware of that. But it's like a reasonable limited card overall. Nothing too exciting. Outlaw Stitcher. 4 mana for a 1/4 human warlock. When it ETBs, make a zombie token. Then put 2 counters on that token for each spell you've cast other than this turn, other than the first. Has plot 4. So this is a very powerful effect if you can get it going. If you end up with a 1/4 and a 4/4, it's pretty awesome. If you go more than that, great. You know, that being said, plotting 5's a lot. Spend 5 mana, do nothing, say go is a pretty tall order. So it might end up being that this is the payoff rather than the enabler. That being said, good draft card. You know, good solid draft card. Get a 4/4, get a 1/1, a 1/4. It's pretty sweet. It's a good limited card. Looks pretty fun. Peerless Rope Master. 5 mana, 4/4 common human rogue. It's an outlaw. Whenever EDBs, return up to 1 target tapped creature to its owner's hand. So we have a lower costed bounce creature than usual. Usually these cost like 6 mana. But it can only bounce tapped creatures. This is a defensive card, not really an offensive card. So it can't bounce a blocker, but can bounce a tapped attacker and stabilize a board. Card's reasonable. I think this card's going to play better than it looks in more defensive decks. Because being able to kind of like remove a thing that attacked you already and then block things as well at a decent size is fine. That being said, it's a 4/4 for 5. It's not super exciting, just kind of draft filler, but it's reasonable. I think this card's fun. Phantom Interference from this free card. 1 mana for an instant. For 4 mana, you get a 2/2 flying spirit token. And for 2 mana, you get a quench. And then, of course, for 5 mana, you get both. This is just like the Inspiration where, like, this card's pretty good and possibly playable in Constructed. You know, Quench is playable enough in Constructed anyway. Make Disappear and so on and so forth. And then, like, being able to tack on this flyer later in the game is cool. And then also just, like, your opponent didn't do anything. All right, I'll just play a 2/2. Whatever. Got to do something, right? Don't want to waste the mana. So this card's pretty sweet. I think it's a pretty cool card. Has a chance to Constructed. It's a pretty cool limited card. Also, it's important to look at the context of cards. The blue-white mechanic in the set is a lot about just saying go with mana up. This does that. So there you go. All right, so definitely a cool draft card. Fringe constructed card. Pretty sweet. Plan the Heist. Coming up for a sorcery. Surveil 3 if you have no cards in hand. Then draw 3. Plot 4. So we have a strictly better concentrate. Aww. All my homies who were there back in the day know concentrate, right? 4 mana draw 3 cards. It was a good card, honestly. And it's not a bad rate for drawing 3 cards. And then, of course, for hands empty, gets Surveil. That's not going to happen very often, I don't think. You know, for Constructed, this is a sorcery. It's not really playable, I don't think. You know, it's just too much mana on both sides. And, like, you know, we're pretty past the point of just, like, tapping 4 to draw 3 being a good thing to do. You know, Magic's on the board these days. But in Limited, I think this card's pretty reasonable, obviously. Plotting is pretty cool. It's a reload. Definitely want to play this in a more defensive deck that can, like, stabilize. You know, you can't play this on turn 4 when you're under pressure. You know, you need to, like, make some blockers in, kind of keep things going. Maybe play this on turn 6, you know, their rule spell or something like that, too. But yeah, definitely a reasonable limited card for sure. And pour one out for Concentrate. The old Razzle Dazzler. 2 mana for a 1/2 common human wizard. Whenever you cast a second spell each turn, put a counter on Razzle Dazzler, and it can't be blocked this turn. Obviously an archetype common. Until you get the counter on, this card's awful. So this card seems pretty fillery to me. If you're playing a lot of cheap spells and you can trigger it, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, most decks are not going to want this. If you are the archetype that wants this, you'll get it late. It's a limited card for realistically. Seize the Secrets. Got a sleeper card here, folks. This card's pretty sweet. Demand it for a sorcery, draw 2 cards. It's Divination. However, it costs 1 less to cast if you've committed a crime this turn. Magic's a funny thing. You know, Divination, the amount of draw 2 cards, is unplayable in most things. 2 mana draw 2 cards is almost vintage playable. Like, Night's Whisper sees play in, like, you know, Vintage and Legacy at times. Maybe not anymore, but at least it used to, you know. And Night's Whisper is just 2 mana draw 2, lose 2, you know. Cards like Expressive Iteration and, you know, other draw 2 effects obviously play in different spots. They're all effectively just draw 2 for 2. And what does your blue deck want to do besides Thoughtseize you, Fatal Push your creature, Bolt your creature, you know, all that sort of stuff, you know, just like blah, 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 do this, do that. And there you go, you know, realistically. So I think this card's got a chance to show up in some cool spots. You know, Bolt your creature, draw 2. Obviously, if, you know, it depends on what other card draw cards are available. But I think this card just looks like a Divination. It's not. I think this card is definitely playable and constructed, which is awesome. And that's pretty sweet. In Limited, it's still good, but not as exciting as constructed. But yeah, definitely a pretty cool one. Seize the Secrets. Up next is Shackle Slinger. Demand for a 3/2 human soldier. Uncommon. Cast a second spell each turn. Choose a creature an opponent controls. If it's tapped, stun it. Otherwise, tap it. So you got a little bit of a tapper here. This is a weird card because it's a pretty aggressive card. And it seems like the blue-white deck wants to be not aggressive and limited. So that being said, this is like a weird, like, it doesn't really jive too well with what the deck's trying to do, but the rate's fine. 3/2 for 3, decent ability. Probably limited filler for the most part, but, you know. The Shift and Grift. Blue plus, sorcery, uncommon. Spree. +2, exchange 2 creatures. +1, exchange 2 artifacts. +1, exchange 2 enchantments. Commander card through and through, right? This is going to be an awesome commander card. You know, you're swapping things around left and right all over the table. Cool, it's fun. And constructed, you rather just kill for stuff, I think. You know, not really a effect we see in constructed usually. In Limited, it can work. You know, this is a switcheroo for only 4 mana, not 5. So, like, this could be, you know, a card you work in some way. Give them a 1/1 token, get a 5/5, whatever kind of thing. But yeah, this is mostly a commander card. You know, Limited. You probably get a good story or two in Limited, but, like, you know, I don't think this card wants to run my deck most of the time. The Constructed, not really either, but it's cool. Slick Shot Lockpicker. They for a 2/3 creature human rogue. Whenever it ETBs, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gets flashback to end of turn. Flashback costs the mana cost and has plot 3. So, kind of a weird Snapcaster Mage. Obviously, 3 mana to give a thing flashback is rough because, like, you need to cast a spell also and pay for it. That being said, it's got plot. So you plot it, and you play it, and you do it, and you have all your mana on tap, which is kind of cool also. So, again, slots into that sort of, like, blue-white plot archetype. Constructive, this card's obviously not good enough. But in Limited, this card seems reasonable. You know, body's fine. Effect's pretty good. Mechanics kind of cool. It's reasonable. Slick Shot Vault Buster. 2 mana for a 1/4 common with Vigilance. Has +2/+0 as long as you made a crime this turn. This card's solid. Again, another good defensive card. They can also attack, which is sweet. This card's pretty good. You know, a 1/4 Vigilance for 3 is obviously not like the most exciting card ever, but it's fine, honestly. You gotta not die in Limited these days. You know, decks are very, very aggressive. And then being able to just pop in for 3 in random spots is great too, and still block. So, fine Limited filler card. Not the most exciting card of all time, but definitely playable. Spring Splasher. 2 mana for a 2/1 Frog Beast. That's horrifying. Just horrifying. Whenever it attacks, target creature, if any player controls, gets -3/-0 until end of turn. This card's just a really good 2-drop, right? So, aside from the fact this is a crime spree waiting to happen, like, this is just a 2-drop that makes it very hard for your opponent to block. Just attack it, they can't block it. Cool. Attack it, they can't block it. And, like, it also commits crimes. It's just a 2-drop. They block and trade, whatever, you know? So, I like this card a lot. Good 2-drop, good crime enabler. The crime is the big part here, but the rate's fine too, so which makes it a good limited card. Step Between Worlds. We got 5 mana for a sorcery. Each player may shuffle their hand and graveyard to their library. Each player who does draws 7 cards. Exile this. Plot for 6. So we have a Time Twister. Note that it is optional for your opponent, so you can't punk them out with Shieldred. Yeah, right? There you go. So, and, so 5 mana for a Time Twister is obviously a little pricey. 6 mana plotted is kind of interesting because you can plot it and then do it the next turn with all your mana untapped. So this is obviously a potential combo card in various formats because anytime you put draw 7 on a card, it can be pretty nasty. But, you know, in Standard and in Pioneer, I mean, maybe, but probably not. 6 mana to plot this and say go is pretty rough. You know, I like that they made it so it's only optional so you can't shield with them. But yeah. Kind of an interesting card. Probably more of a fun, kind of casual card. Interesting and limited too, because like you can like use 7 cards first, but they can do it also. So I don't know. Fun, wonky card. You get the idea. And yeah, Step Between Worlds. Stoic Sphinx.
It's a trap.
This is my trap card. Folks have been talking about this card a little bit, and I don't think it's as good as people are looking for. So you have 4 mana for a 5/3 flash flyer. It has hexproof as long as you haven't cast a spell this turn. So the idea, right, is I'm playing a control deck. End step, I tap out and play this thing. They're tapped out. Once I untap, I just attack and don't cast spells, obviously, because I'm trying to play a control deck. Eventually, you got to cast a spell. You know, like eventually the shields are going to be down, and that go for the throats and rotting in their hand all game as your control deck has a target now too. So I think this card is pretty mediocre to unplayable constructed. I think that, like, you could maybe find spots for it if, like, you're just playing a somewhat aggressive tempo deck that really needs a flash flyer that can hit. But overall, I think it's pretty unexciting. And limited, this card's great, right? A 5/3 flying flash for 4 is already just good enough by itself. So it's a great limited card for sure. But I think overall, not the most exciting card. Maybe an outside shot constructed in a flash deck or something like that too, but if it was a 3/5, I might like it better, honestly. But it's so finicky. And like, control finishes these days gotta really hit. This card does not really hit. So there's a trap card. Stoic Sphinx for blue. Obviously rate limited card though. Stop Cold is next. 4 for a enchantment aura ETB with, it's a flash, enchant artifact or creature. ETB tap it. And then enchantment loses all abilities, doesn't tap. It's just like your most generic removal spell of all time. If you've seen this card a million times before in limited. Blue removal spell unlimited. Looks reasonable. Moving on. To take the fall, folks. These outlaws are getting out of hand. We got to stop them, alright? 1 mana instant. Creature gets -1/-0 on the turn. Draw a card. However, if you control an outlaw, assassin, mercenary, pirate, rogue, or warlock, it gets -4/-0 until end of turn. That's insane. Alright? This is a combat trick for 1 mana that will often win you a combat, draw you a card, and commit a crime. For 1 mana. It's a cantrip. Like, and literally, the fail state for this card is 1 mana, draw a card, make a crime. That's the literal floor of this card. And the ceiling is 2 for 1 mana, which is insane. This card's awesome. Has a possible chance to construct it if you're like desperate for cantrips and the outlaw part makes sense in your deck. But yeah, this card's awesome. Great common limited. One of the best blue commons. You would play 4 of these, I think. You know, card's super awesome. And also good with all the things I want you to play multiple spells. Card's great. Love it. Take the fall, Bombin Common in blue. Key to the Vault. It's meant for a legendary artifact equipment. Whenever a creature does combat damage to a player, look at that many cards at the top of your library. You may exile a non-land card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. I'm sorry, folks. I spaced out. The eclipse was coming. I was thinking about the eclipse. And I was reading it out loud, but I was not actually processing what it said. I'm going to read it again. Whenever a equipped creature does combat damage to a player, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may exile an online card among them. Rest of the bottom, cast it for free. Okay, so this is like a weird, like, equipment that can, like, maybe cast spells for free. That being said, this is, like, 5 mana to equip and play. Creature must hit. No augmentation. No evasion. Just totally unplayable constructed. I don't think it's good and limited, honestly. Like, it's just, I mean, if you're playing a set of flyers, maybe, I guess. But overall, yeah. I mean, commander card, not much else. A lot of hoops jump through here, folks. A lot of hoops. Well, this town ain't big enough. That's it. This town just ain't big enough. We need more infrastructure. All right? We need more. We got a 5 mana for an instant. Cost 3 less to cast if it targets a permanent that you control. Return up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So this card's pretty sweet. This is a 5 mana bounce 2 of their things, or 2 mana bounce your thing and their thing, which is a card we've seen before. Runaway Together. I forgot the one from Ravnica back in the day. Peel from Reality was a really good card also. This can save your thing, bounce their thing. Pretty powerful effect, honestly. The fact that this can do both, it can be just like 5 mana bounce 2 of your things, or do Peel from Reality, is pretty awesome. I think it's going to be a great limited card. Very, very good. Good in aggro deck. Good to save your own stuff. And just great. Just great limited card. Excellent, excellent. 3 steps ahead. 1 blue plus. 3 steps ahead. 1 blue plus. It's got Spree. It's an instant. It's a rare. We get Cancel. We get +3 to make a token that's a copy of an artifact or creature you control. Or +2, draw 2, discard 1. So we have, basically we have a modal spell here. We have Cancel, Catalog, both unplayable cards by themselves. Or we have 4 mana to copy something. So 4 mana Clone also, but it's an instant and copy an artifact too. Individually though, all of those are bad. Together, not too shabby, right? So we have like, this can be 5 mana counter spell, draw 2, discard 1. This can be, 6 mana counter spell, copy a thing. This can be, you do whatever, do the math, figure all the modes out, That's pretty good. That being said, this card is really, really clunky. Like the dream scenario of like 6 mana, counter your spell, copy a creature, draw 2, discard 1 is like not even as close to as good as Sublime Epiphany is. So I think this card is like a fine 1 over 2 of, the kind of card that like, if you're actually looking for a cancel, this is the best one probably. But I would play 4 of this card, So I think this card's a little overrated for the most part. But it's reasonable. Definitely a reasonable card. In limited also, I think it's excellent in limited. Being able to copy one of your things is pretty sweet. And then all the modes are good too. So good limited card. I think this is a fringe constructed card in Standard and Pioneer if you want to cancel. Visage Bandit is next. 4 mana for a 2/2. You may have an ETB as a copy of a creature you control. It's also a shapeshifter and a rogue though. And you can plot 3. Typically clones that copy your own stuff aren't very good. And this card does not seem to buck that trend. It can be a 2/2 on an empty board, which is something. But for the most part, this is just like, clones your own stuff. Typically, that's not very good. It will never be better than the best thing on your board. And might not match the best thing on their board. So, just not a very exciting card. Limited constructed in anything. And now you get on to our big score cards. Again, these are cards that are not in the main set. They're basically just the aftermath of the set. They are legal and standard. They're in the booster packs, legal and limited. So they're part of the set review because they're in standard, obviously. And they just show up randomly in packs. Every 5th pack will have one. They're all mythics. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's the idea. So we have Esoteric Duplicator. 2 mana for an artifact clue. Whenever you sacrifice esoteric. Oh my god, it's hard to say.
You're saying it wrong.
It's a hard one to say, folks. Whenever you sacrifice Esoteric Duplicator or another artifact, you may pay 2. If you do, at the beginning of the next end step, create a token that's a copy of that artifact. Pay 2, sack this, draw a card. So it's just like cycles and draws cards. and you just keep doing it or sacrifice. Yeah, whatever. It's just everything's a commander card these days. I don't know. No one's playing this card constructed. No one's playing this card limited. I'm moving on. Simulacrum Synthesizer. 3 mana for an artifact. EDB Scry 2. Whenever the artifact with mana value 3 or greater and is battlefield under your control, make a construct. This card I actually like a lot. So this is 3 mana for an artifact, Scry 2, and then you play an artifact, get a construct. Play an artifact, get a construct. That's a pretty powerful effect, honestly. For 2 reasons. One, you're just like playing an artifact deck and just getting constructs. Constructs are really, really good, obviously. They're very, very powerful. And then also, like, you could go back into older formats. Scale and Tooth of Kisgoria, anyone? Remember those cards, anyone? Right? Go bam, 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 tokens. But yeah, I think this card's pretty good. I think this card's kind of a sleeper. Can definitely do some cool stuff if there is an artifact deck. That being said, there needs to be a deck that really wants this card almost exactly. And if there isn't, it's not playable. But I think it could be there. Limited unplayable, obviously, but got a cool vibe going. Also, it's not uncommon for artifacts to have a printed cost of 3 or more, but cast for less. For example, Halo Hopper. You know, you can cast that for 0 and get a token, which is kind of cool too. So, cool card for sure. Obviously a commander card also, but pretty reasonable. World Waker Helm. What's with those weird artifacts? 3 mana for an artifact. If you create 1 or more artifact tokens, instead make that many plus a map, and then pay 2 mana and make a token that's a copy of an artifact token you control. Commander card. Play it in your Urza commander deck and copy your constructs. Have fun. Tell me all about it. All right. That's it for blue. So, best in show blue is Duelist of the Mind. Seize the Secrets is our sleeper card. Our trap card is Stoic Sphinx. And Take the Fall is our Bombin Common. Blue's all done, folks. Like, comment, subscribe. We got black coming up real soon. Again, we got 10 new brews on Wednesday. I don't even know what day it is. And that's it. All right, I'm out, folks. Next is coming up. You two folks, like, comment, subscribe. All great. Peace.